Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Jane, your favorite psychologist. I hope all of you are well. The big conversation that we're having today is a basic anatomy of the human brain. And what I want you to think about when we think about the brain, it's only about a 3 to 5 pound organ, but it houses all of who and what we are. It gives us the ability to think. It gives us the ability to um, enjoy the world around us, to know, oh, this is sunlight. Oh, this is regular light. And it gives us the ability to navigate our world. That's one piece. The other piece about our brain is that this is where we house consciousness and allow us to even realize that there is a world out there that is outside of us. And that is a big deal. The next big deal about our brain is that no two human brains are exactly the same. And just think about that for a moment. There are 8 billion people on our planet. And of that 8 billion people, no two human brains are exactly the same. There may be slight variation based on genetics, slight variation based on brain chemistry, slight variation based on brain anatomy. And based on those slight variations, we have a myriad of personalities and dispositions. Absolutely incredible, absolutely fascinating. And so I want you to think about your brain as a one of a kind edition. And always remember that as long as this earth rotates on its axis and revolve around the sun, there will never be another you. And it speaks to the uniqueness of the creator of our universe. It is absolutely incredible when you think about this thing that we have in our cranium. And so that's our conversation for today. Our anatomy of our brain. Now, when we are looking, and we're really looking at functionality based on lobes, we can look at functionality based on hemisphere. We can look at functionality, and I'll talk about each part, but this is really based on regions as opposed to based on individual anatomical brain part. I may do another video on that, but right now I just wanted us to be able to have like big ideas based on regions. These regions, we call them lobes. And when we're looking at lobal functioning, it kind of makes it easier for us to talk about different aspects of our brain function. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Um, the frontal part here, you see it? This is called our frontal lobe. Very big deal for our frontal lobe. Our motor cortex, and that is what's there for voluntary movement. So let's say you want to get up and walk to the park. That is a voluntary movement. The production of speech in the Broca area. Now, when you think about speech, speech has several components to it. Part of the component is you visualize or you conceptualize a thought or an idea. Once you have that idea in your head, that's one piece. That idea has to come out of your mouth. That is a muscular function, and that is speech. Now, when you think about people who are mute, it's because the muscular function isn't functioning properly. It doesn't mean that they lack the ability to think and conceptualize ideas. They can still think, they can still comprehend, they can still conceptualize ideas, and they can still communicate. And so that's a separate function that occurs in our temporal lobe, and we'll get to that. But the speech production occurs in the Broca area, and those are the words that come out of our mouth. Personality, emotions, very big deal. Remember, we have to be able to have emotions, first of all, and then we have to be able to have judgment. So, am I going to yell now, or am I going to yell tomorrow, or what? And so, what emotions am I displaying at this moment? And am I displaying the appropriate emotion for the current situation that I'm experiencing right now? Planning, problem solving, these are huge life skills that we must have. It is difficult to have a conversation or to try and do things with an individual who lacks the ability to plan. That is a life skills. Our ability to problem solve. We have to be able to look around in our lives, right? And assess the situation so that we can even be aware that one, there is a problem. Two, this is the actual problem that I'm having. Three, this is how I'm going to solve the problem. Four, this is what I need in terms of resources to solve the problem. Very important skills. And all of that occurs in our frontal lobe. Now, the middle part here, this is in the yellow, that's kind of here in the middle, right? This is our parietal lobe. Our parietal lobe is there for sensation. And so it's where touch, pain, temp, pressure it is processed. And again, these are incredibly important sensations that we have to be able to recognize. If I cannot recognize temperature, I could sit out in the cold and freeze to death because then I don't even know that it is cold. Pain, if I don't know, and there are people who do not experience pain. But if I don't know that, then I don't know when I'm in harm's way because then I can't experience pain. Very important, and our brain allows us to do all of those things. Spatial awareness. Where am I in relation to something or someone? Very, very important. Proprioception. In the last video with the 8 senses, I talked about proprioception in detail. And proprioception is the body's ability to sense position, to sense movement and force without relying solely on visual input. This is incredibly essential when we're looking at people's personal space. When we're walking down the block, I'm walking down this block. How do I know when to turn? Or how do I know when I reach the end of the building and it's time for me to turn? How do I know that? See, when I am walking up a stairs, how do I know how high to lift my feet so that I don't fall and eat the concrete? How do I know that? Proprioception. And it is a very important sense that we utilize all of the time. The next lobe, this is our occipital lobe, it's the one in blue in the back. And in our occipital lobe, this is the big deal for visual processing. When we are looking at an object, we see this object. Our eyes collect information, but our eyes does not say, okay, this is a table or a chair, whatever. No. Our eyes, it's a sensation, and the video, the eight senses covered this in detail. Our eyes collect information, and it collects that information, and that information is sent through the optic nerve to the occipital lobe, to the visual cortex in the occipital lobe. And that is where the details of an object that we see is determined, its process. Oh, that's a table. Oh, that's a chair. Oh, that's a dog running at me, right? And so we get to determine, and that is perception, the details of an object. And the brain makes a determination of what this thing is and how we're supposed to respond to it, right? So interpretation of what we see, um, recognition of objects and faces. Absolutely important. When we think about facial recognition, there's some people who can't recognize faces. They see the face, but they can't recognize the face. And so those people navigate their world by the recognition of voices. Oh, that's the voice of so and so. Our next region, this is not a lobe, but this area here is also quite essential. Um, this is our cerebellum, and our cerebellum balance, posture, and the coordination of voluntary movement. Movement is a very complex thing that we do. And this is why when I started the video, I talked about the fascination and the amazing, just the amazing abilities of the brain and what it allows us to do. Fine motor movement, when we are writing, that's considered to be fine motor movement. Motor learning, so smooth, accurate actions. And our last lobe is our temporal lobe. Huge. Our temporal lobe, that is where our auditory cortex is housed, and it is there for hearing, but it's also where we have the region for comprehension, the Varnix area. And so it is where we understand, for people who sign language, speech, written language. This is our area of comprehension. The next part is our memory in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is what allows us to learn. It allows us because it allows us to memorize things. It allows us to apply information because we are able to remember something. And the next big one is emotional regulation. I talked about this. If you look at the video that talk about the different types of age, it's called Age is More Than Just a Number, where we're looking at emotional regulation. And every human being have to be able to regulate our emotions so that we're able to respond appropriately to the situation that we're in. That's one. To recognize the situation that we are in, and regulate our emotions accordingly. Now, When we are looking at childhood trauma, parental betrayal, this concept or idea of you're not grown at 18, all of these different things that our brain can do come into play. Because when we are looking, let's take trauma for one, dependent on the age of the trauma and the time or the length of the trauma, it can impact the architecture of the brain, including the size of the brain. And if my brain is not the average size like everybody else's, then it impacts my ability to do so many things. Because then, let's take the hippocampus, for example. If my hippocampus is smaller than others, is smaller than the average size, then it impacts my ability to memorize information. It impacts my ability to learn, because then the capacity that it should have, it does not have. And so this translates to the entire size of the brain. If the size of the brain is not the size that it should be, that average size that allows us to function at our peak, then we no longer, or we don't have the capacity, the full capacity that we're supposed to have. And this is where, when we look at parental betrayal, when we look at trauma, childhood trauma, when we look at you're not grown at 18, what is happening inside the person's brain, and how does that show up in their lives? I hope you enjoyed the video today. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. If you have any videos or stories, with regards to parental betrayal, please send your stories to me, email them to me. If you have any stories about you're not grown at 18, where you did something that you weren't supposed to do between 18 and 24, and how is that still showing up in your life past 24? Again, I am Dr. Jane, and I am your favorite psychologist. Thank you so much for watching.